car that you see here with me is the E-C3 by Citroen, which means this is the electric version of the C3 hatchback that they have. And this is a very critical product for the brand, not just from an Indian operations point of view, but also because this is essentially going to be the test bed for global applications for the group, which is Stellantis. And the group itself has invested over 30 billion euros in electrification and software. So this is going to have a lot of case studies to kind of just pour over for the brand. And how good is this proving out to be in the Indian conditions is what we are trying to find out in this drive report. It was electric ready right from the beginning. It was designed to be an all-electric car, and that is why you don't see the batteries being mounted under the seat separately and under the floor separately. It is one fluid architecture, and it all is housed between the wheelbase. So between the front and the rear tires, you have the entire battery pack, and it's a 29.2 kilowatt hour battery. And the juice from that battery is taken by a motor that does about 57 horsepower and 143 Newton meters. So decent, healthy figures, especially on the torque front. But having said that, it just does not feel like it has the energy. And that's all okay, because for a car of this type, it's not necessary that it needs to be exciting and needs to be violent on acceleration. This is a very friendly city car, and it is going to be used like that. For highway commutes, yes, there is a decent amount of stability that you have, but again, I don't think that this car is going to be used much for highway use or high-speed use at all. The top speed of the E-C3 is limited to 107 kilometers per hour, which I think is okay, because in city where this car is largely going to be subjected to, you will not really be driving at speeds more than that anyway. In fact, speeds of about say 50, 60, 70, that's where this is most comfortable. And the moment you start stretching it to beyond that, those levels are a bit out of breath for it. The battery placement is great because it's packaged very nicely between the wheelbase. And this is an LFP chemistry battery, and it has those typical advantages over the NMC or nickel, manganese and cobalt chemistry. Typically, a NMC would have a life cycle of about 1,000 charges. LFP, they go on for a little bit longer, but they have lesser charge density. Citroen claims that this one will do a range of about 320 odd kilometers, but I don't think that is going to be the case, because if you just put a simple calculation test, depending on how many kilowatts do you use per kilometer in your typical city driving, you will get the safe number of about 250 odd kilometers, or 220 to 250 thereabouts. That should be a very, very good sort of a ballpark figure for this car, and even that range is plenty good. Because this is now an all-electric car, the weight has gone up to the tune of about 300 kilos, which is a huge, huge gain over the stock petrol-powered C3. And yeah, you can feel all that weight in the way this thing drives. The tires are squealing and they're protesting that they don't want to be tortured, even around some very flowy bends. Just the fact that you're a little aggressive on the throttle just makes them go completely nuts. One of the biggest changes from a technical standpoint has been in the braking system, and this is different from the regular standard C3, because the braking system in the electric C3 has been picked up from the turbo variant. So you have a vacuum, you have a booster up front, and then the dia for the front brakes have increased to 54 mm, and the drums at the back are bigger. They're now 9 mm dia. So the whole braking system has been altered. So all that just kind of works together to feed the system in a way that it helps in regeneration. But overall, from the dynamics point of view, this thing definitely feels very, very different to the standard C3. That feels a little bit more light-footed and feels a little bit more enthusiastic. This one feels like it is carrying a fair amount of load on its feet, and you can't get away from the fact that 300 kilos is a lot of heft. The steering feels like it is burdened. The roll or the load shift is fairly pronounced, and this anyway always has been a slightly softly sprung car. Of course, there are these cushions that you have which kind of settle it down very nicely on compression, but this genuinely translates a lot of oscillation into the cabin. And that's all down to the weight, because no matter how much of tuning you do, unless you change the complete suspension, things are not going to be in check as strongly as you want them to be. The whole geometry and the suspension components are exactly the same. It's only those tiny fiddles that the company has done, and that genuinely does not make so much of a change compared to the standard C3, and yeah, the effects are there to be seen. Another very useful thing about the battery pack being placed in the wheelbase or between the front and the rear tires is the fact that you get a full spare wheel and you get no compromise on the luggage space, and that for a car of this sort is very, very good because the utility quotient is that much higher. Other strong traits remain. It's a fairly good cabin, has a very nice funky look to it, plus some eccentric elements here and there which we've all been a fan of. It's a fairly lively cabin for a car of this sort at this price point. And yeah, it just makes you smile. Another good thing is the fact that you have a nice, big and very responsive infotainment screen, and you get all the features that you can probably expect from a car of this size and this sort and the segment. And the fact that you get Android Auto, Apple CarPlay and everything of that sort inbuilt is very nice. Seats, well, I've said this about the C3 and I'll continue to say this about this one, which is the E-C3 or the all-electric C3. They seem to be a little narrow. Slightly larger bodied people will definitely have a little bit of problem getting very comfortable on them. But largely speaking, this seems to be doing the job pretty okay. One bit that we did find out is the fact that the rear, because of the battery placement, has been increased in angle or the height by about 70 millimeters. So when you sit at the back, you don't really have enough under-thigh support, despite of the fact that they've altered the contour of the seat. And especially if you're a tall person, you're going to feel that even more, and it's going to be an exaggerated feeling. Another bit that I'm not a big fan of is the fact that the adjustment for the outside rear view mirrors is still with these stick-like things over here, which is essentially a manual controller. Now this is a wide car, it's the widest in the segment, and even for a person who is tallish, and I'm fairly tall, I have long arms as well, even I can't reach the other end to adjust the mirrors according to my preference. So they should have thought about giving in an electric system over here, but thankfully they've done away with the regular stock inside rear view mirror that they had. Now you get this flip mechanism. Thankfully you don't have to muscle the mirror over here, you just have to do this and it's going to get you into the night mode. That was missing in the C3. It's been done away with, and that's thoughtful on the part of the manufacturer. The big talking point, because this is an all-electric car, is of course the charging. And this thing has a very cool trick up its sleeve. It can go without any need for slow cycles, completely on DC fast charging endlessly. So it can do continuous cycles of fast charging without any drop in battery performance or health. And this thing does about 10 to 80% of charge in just under 1 hour, 57 minutes or thereabouts. And if you then plug this in, and it does not need a separate wall box, there is a charger in the car itself that you can just use to plug into your regular 15 amp socket. And that is going to take a bit of a time. It's going to be to the tune of about 10 and a half hours or thereabouts. Another very interesting thing is that the motor and the battery management system has been supplied by BYD. or Build Your Dreams. That's another great manufacturer from China. Unfortunately, not a lot of people have heard about it, but it's a big industrial mammoth, and they've been doing some fantastic work in the realm of electric mobility, and they own mines and stuff as well. So to round things up, it's a fairly competent product, fairly pleasant as well, and we think it's going to be around 10 lakh rupees or thereabouts. They cannot afford to make it stratospherically high on pricing. So yeah, if they do it around that, it should be okay. The principal rivals are of course the Tatas. You can have the Tiago, you can have the Tigor in the same mix. Nexon is going to sit a notch higher, so that is probably out of the equation. But this, for what it is not bad at all. There is going to be a punch electric, I'm pretty sure about that. And then the game is going to be even more interesting and exciting. But the fact that Citroen designed this car from the ground up and thought about electrification right from the word go just goes to show that the intention was always there, of course, and they're invested into the future. And this, as I said right in the beginning, is going to be a big test bed and a big case study from India for the global market because of the applications that this car can have. So it is a very, very critical product, very crucial product, and a lot is riding on it.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.